behind me is probably one of the most exciting I've ever had the privilege of driving. It's a 1997 Porsche 911 GT1 Evo, and that Evo bit's quite special actually because they only made 3 of the Evos of what was already an extremely limited production run of the Porsche 911 GT1 anyway. This actually was the only Evo spec car that left the factory as new, one of 3 in total. So it ticks the rarity box several times over, but as I discovered in testing yesterday, it definitely also ticks the sort of driving exhilaration box as well. I'm pretty lucky to drive cars like this because I primarily work as a pro driver, as a driver coach for the kind of clients who have sort of race car collections and are amateur racers doing this kind of thing as a hobby, and many of them appreciate a helping hand from a pro to help coach them and organize the weekends. So every now and again you get incredibly lucky and your client buys something spectacular like this. So this is actually a reasonably historic example of the GT1 Porsche because it's one of the most, if not the most successful of all of them, I think, in terms of quantity of races and associated results. It was sold new to a guy called Klaus Beitzek in 1997, and he raced it extensively in Canada, but it also went to Daytona and did elements of the American Le Mans series as well, and it racked up, off the top of my head, a dozen or so wins. So it's a hugely significant example of these chassis. This is, by the way, chassis 117. Do you know, in terms of how it is to drive, I wasn't sure what to expect. We did a very slow and delicate sort of installation run during the Goodwood members meeting demonstrations just a couple of weeks ago. We couldn't really open up the throttle, it was restricted speeds. And then we got here for testing a couple of days ago and it bucketed with rain, so all of our shakedown laps, basically 3/4 of the primary day of testing that we have had with it so far, was in the pouring rain. Therefore, being delicate, working through our program, it's had a huge winter recommissioning because it was actually previously prepared for road use. It's a car that comes with road registration. The previous owner had it completely prepared for use on the road, and he did use it on the road. So it needed a lot of work to undo that and get it ready for proper full-on racetrack mode. But that's done now, and I found out at the end of our test here just the other day that when you bolt a set of slicks on it and a dry line appears, it takes you at warp speed into a whole other level of performance, and not a level that I was necessarily expecting. It's not going to be the fastest car around. There are younger, faster, smarter, cleverer cars in terms of technology, but it's something about the package where you've got this H-pattern 6-speed gearbox where you've got to operate it fully manually. You've got a heel and toe on the downshift. It's got a synchromesh gearbox, so it's not the fastest. You really have to think quite carefully about how you shift, when you shift, how much blip you give on the throttle on the downshift. Do you loop a gear and skip a gear or two on the way down through the gearbox because the braking forces are so powerful? They just condense the braking zones down to very short distances, which make it hard to get down from, say, 6th gear to 2nd gear for the hairpin or the chicane. So there's a lot going on. You've also got essentially the engine out of the 962s. You've got a twin turbo 3.2 litre flat 6 engine pumping out well over 600 horsepower. A fair bit of turbo lag, so that impacts the technique you have to use on the throttle. You can sort of do the old Ayrton Senna style sort of tapping of the throttle through the slower apexes if you want to try to spool it up and have the turbo primed and ready for when you need the power on corner exit. I've tried that. I haven't perfected it yet, not by a long shot, but it's fun working on it. And also sometimes you need to kind of just open the pedal a bit and then breathe out as the power arrives and then catch it with your foot and then carry on. So it's just a big learning curve, super fun, a very, I think, a really nice but aggressive sound from the engine when you're at full throttle. It just keeps pulling, keeps pulling. It's a wonderful car to drive, and you know, I've driven cars that would be faster on a stopwatch, but I've not driven many at all that put as big a smile on your face as this did the other day.